If you enjoy the subject matter of these podcasts, then you would definitely enjoy any of the 3 Patreon discussion groups that are available. You can read about these groups by going to the infinitesparkofbeing.com and clicking the participate button. I also offer a meditation group every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can go to any of my social media profiles and find a link tree with that information as well. This is a community of everyday people who are interested in living with a deeper understanding of spiritual practice and how it can be applied in a practical sense to our everyday lives. So join us. Welcome to the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. My name is Keith Welsh, and in this episode, we are going to talk about the importance of the words that we use in our spiritual practice. This practice, of course, that I'm speaking of is also known as our everyday life. So this human experience, this human life, is in and of itself a spiritual one. It's a spiritual experience. It's a spiritual practice. We are experiencing this realm, this dimension, this planet as spirit, as souls. You could say that we are experiencing or practicing being better human beings as spirit. And as we do so, we work through our curriculum. That's the soul's curriculum. We are inhabiting these organisms and experiencing the organism's mind as a curriculum. Or you could say that we are experiencing the manifestation of our thoughts as reality. At that point, reality becomes the curriculum. Remember, thoughts are not things, as Louise Hay would say. It's only a thought, and a thought can change. So since this world, our reality is made up of thoughts, and if we change the thoughts, then we change our reality. So this is all subject to change. That's good news. We experience thoughts as the activity of the mind, and these thoughts shape our experience of the world. Our thoughts become outpictured as our reality, the way we see things, the way we perceive the world. And remember, perception is the way we regard, understand, and interpret things. The way we regard, the way we understand, and the way we interpret, it's all subjective, which means it's subject to change. So a huge part of how we experience these things depends on the words that we use to describe them. The words we choose to describe the world around us shapes the way we experience it. So if we constantly describe a heartless, cruel world filled with evil and depravity, then that's exactly what we will perceive, and what we perceive we will experience. And since, us as human beings love confirmation, being that we're tribal animals, we seek out others who share the same worldview. We will find people who will support our perception. If you're a couple steps ahead, you see where I'm going here. So remember, this confirmation is all done subconsciously. We don't know we're doing it. That's why we look up one day and we're surrounded by who we are surrounded by. Now, zoom in from how you describe the world at large, zoom into your country, your state. Now apply this to your town, your family, and finally yourself. Your mind applies the same rules to all of it. The mind will find confirmation bias, find a pattern, and jump through whatever hoops are necessary to make that pattern feel real and consistent. So the question is always, why would the mind be drawn to a negative pattern of perception? Because patterns are consistent, and consistency feels like safety to the nervous system. Remember, you, as a soul, are inhabiting the organism. The organism has biological imperatives. Spiritual practice is about finding the balance between the animal and the soul. It's about being in the world, but not of the world. So through spiritual practice, we start to transcend the world. And no, this doesn't mean you transform into your rainbow light body and leave your car idling in traffic. Transcendence is about learning to let the world move through you without becoming so attached to the outcome. This again touches on karma yoga, but that's another topic for another time. So what this boils down to is that language matters. The words we use matter. Language is an agreement that we've all made with one another to use these sounds and these symbols to describe the world around us and to communicate our needs and wants to each other. Furthermore, language is a cognitive faculty of the mind, meaning it's one of the ways the mind constructs what we perceive as reality. You could say that our world is made up of words, of language. In fact, let's revisit the widget example that I've used in the past. I won't go too deep into it, I promise, but let's say I take an object out of a box, I place it on a table in front of you. You've never seen the object and your mind has no context for it. So I'm going to tell you about it, and I say, this is called a widget. Widgets are very dangerous. And then I begin explaining all the things that could go wrong if you engage with these widgets. And for whatever reason, you believe me. Maybe because we're good friends or perhaps we're family. Either way, you believe what I tell you. So what's happened here is that I've used language to describe something to you. I used words, our agreed upon symbols, to define this object. And then later on, when you encounter one of these objects, your mind will perceive it as an object in space and immediately refer back to my description to label it. Your subconscious mind will tell your body how to feel about the object, and then your conscious mind will step in and elaborate on those feelings, reinforcing the description that I gave you. So what you're experiencing isn't truly your experience, it's my description. And that description is shaped by language. You are experiencing my language. And there's a lot of directions we can take this thought exercise. But what I'd like you to notice is that in a sense, I, as the descriptor of the widget, I've put a spell on you. That spell, through the use of language, has now shaped the experience you'll have with widgets from this point forward. Or you could say that your mind is manifesting that experience based on the language I used to teach you about widgets. Now think about the implications. News, language. Social media, language. School, language. Friends, language. Family, language. All of this enters your consciousness as descriptors that will later tell your body how to feel about something. That feeling in your body will then pull your conscious mind into doubling down on that language program, reinforcing your perception of the world, or rather, their perception of the world, or their perception of love, of politics, and so on. So this is usually where I digress into a rant about free will, but again, that's a topic for another time. I'm going to stay away from it. So what does this mean? This means that right speech or mindful speech is an absolute necessity if we're planning on changing our experience of reality. Now, when we talk about right speech or mindful speech, we always think about how we talk to others. Well, right now, we're not going to worry about how we talk to others. Much like compassion, this all has to start with us, not them. Once we work out our own stuff, how we talk to others and interact with others as a stimulus in the universe will change. But for now, it's about us. When I start talking to others about this concept, their mind immediately begins to defend their views, usually on something political. They'll start saying things like, but what about this person or that person? Can't we describe them as evil or them as bad? Isn't the world actually a messed up place? And I say no. Some of it is difficult, some of it is tragic, but not all of it. You see, there's a danger in speaking in absolutes. When we develop a habit, because all of this language is essentially a neurological habit of speaking in absolutes, we leave no room to be surprised. We leave no room to be shown anything different. In fact, in these exchanges with others, when I show them something that contradicts their belief that the world is a wretched place, they often respond by saying that the good that I'm showing them is just an anomaly. So we have a problem. I then ask, do you want to experience something different, something other than this wretched place you're describing? And they always say yes, but quickly fall back into ruminating over something tragic. Why? Because many of us feel that if we don't fully acknowledge suffering, whether it's the suffering of others or our own, it means that we're ignoring or disrespecting it. It's almost as if we can't accept the world or that the world can hold both kindness and cruelty at the same time. We struggle with the idea that allowing beauty into our perception somehow diminishes the reality of pain. Remember, this ability to hold two opposing points of view in your mind at the same time, both as true, both of them being true, relatively true, is a requirement on the spiritual path. And I know I've talked about this before. This is where everybody struggles. I understand why, but you got to get over it. And I see this same kind of thing when I'm working one-on-one with people going through grief and loss. There's often a belief that if they stop crying, it somehow means that they didn't truly love the person they lost. Grief is deeply physical. It's not just about the intellectual side of loss, the knowing that something has changed. It's also about the body's response. When I guide people to a place where their body feels stillness and quiet in the face of this loss, whether it's a person, a pet, or situation, they realize something. They realize that while something has changed, what they are grieving is not actually gone per se. So while the mind understands that the person or the thing that they are grieving for is no longer accessible in the same way, the body reaches a state of relaxation. The body feels equanimity. And equanimity, when they say light conquers darkness, equanimity is the ultimate light. Happiness and bliss are not the ultimate light. They need to be maintained, and we get attached to them. Equanimity, that stillness, that's the ultimate light. And this is where the discomfort comes in. People often ask, does this mean that I don't care? My response is usually to challenge their question. Like, you tell me, do you still care? They always say yes. They realize that caring doesn't require constant pain. Pain does not equal love, period. The intensity of the pain that you feel is not a reflection of the depth of love that you feel. The same principle applies to how we see the world. Saying you live in a beautiful world doesn't mean that you're turning a blind eye to its difficulties. It means you're choosing to acknowledge the beauty that exists alongside the pain. This isn't about ignoring the hard things. It's about deciding what kind of experience you want to cultivate. Do you want to stay locked into suffering, or do you want to invite a different experience into your life? Believing that you can accomplish something that's challenging doesn't mean that you don't understand that there's difficulty involved, but ruminating on the difficulty, repeatedly telling yourself. If you believe that you would benefit from working with me one-on-one on anxiety, ruminating thinking, grief and loss, or stress management, then shoot me an email or a direct message. Or if you're interested in learning about how meditation and spiritual practice can transform your reality and in turn change your life, then again, please reach out through email or direct message. Thank you. Repeatedly telling yourself how hard things are or how difficult it will be for you specifically serves no purpose. It only reinforces the hardship. Now, let's consider the word affirmation. When we talk about affirmations, we're usually referring to positive statements that we repeat over and over again, affirming the truth through the repetition of the affirmation. But the truth is that the negative descriptions that we give the world, ourselves, or any situation becomes an affirmation. We are affirming the difficulty and hardship. We have faith in that difficulty and hardship. It is a practice of faith. And that's not always good. Having faith that people are going to hurt you and that things are going to be hard, and those people that are hyper negative always tell me that they struggle with faith. And I always tell them, no, you don't. You have plenty of faith. You just got it pointed the wrong direction. So by repeating these things, whether they're actual statements points of view or philosophical opinions, we're creating a mantra. The word mantra in Sanskrit means mind tool or mind protection. You are protecting your mind from anything that is not aligned with the mantra, whether the mantra is positive or negative. You're defending the mind against anything that contradicts it. Now think about that for a moment. Now consider the other definition. Mantra also means mind tool. A mantra is a tool you use to build reality. It's a tool for constructing your experience of the world. Really think about what that means. Now ask yourself, what do you spend your time affirming? What mantras are you using to construct your experience of reality? Now let's move from affirmations and mantras to the word faith. I know I mentioned it a minute ago. But these statements you seem to live by, statements about others, about political parties, your neighbors, your family, or even yourself, are often spoken with complete faith. Wrap your head around that for a moment. You are exercising perfect faith in your negative opinion of the world. You are exercising complete faith in your negative opinion of yourself and in your negative opinion of your abilities. Maybe your mantra or your affirmation is just my luck, or, well, that's Murphy's Law, or I'd love to do that, but I just don't have the money, or maybe it's that's hard, but it would take too long. These words are used by the mind to find a way by which only these repeated ideas are possible. The mind is your reality. It needs this pattern of difficulty to be true. Remember, confirmation. It looks for confirmation. It surrounds itself with people that will support that confirmation. This is why in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, when he brings up the idea of the mastermind, those people you share your ideas with, not your grumpy aunt and uncle, not your fucking negative naysayer parents or whoever. Remember, the mind is looking for confirmation. And right or wrong, good or bad, the nervous system is soothed by that. It's like that old saying, right? The mind always chooses a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. So I'd also like to point out, while I'm ranting here, that you didn't consciously choose these negative descriptions. They were programmed into you. Everyone receives a program, an education, if you will, and we all go through it. But not everyone takes the time to unlearn that education. In fact, this deprogramming isn't for everyone. It requires vigilance and dedication, two qualities that unfortunately many people are lacking. Whether that's by design or not, once again, a topic for another time. But the point is, we end up in these negative places by accident. No one sits down and thinks, well, if things go well in 5 years, I will have built a wall of negativity so high that I can't see over it. Of course not. So when we first set out on a path to change our experience of the world, it can feel daunting. I get that. But imagine where you could be with persistent conscious effort. You got to this place by accident. But if we apply persistence and intention to our words and how we describe what we are experiencing, we can reach a place of change much faster. If we don't change the language we use to describe our experience or even who we are, how will we ever experience anything different? Think about it. Do you really expect things to change just because occasionally you hit a wall and think, man, it'd be nice if things were different? Do you think things will ever change because you sometimes read a book about it or occasionally meditate or even worse, engage in some half-hearted version of spiritual practice? Of course not. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Our world is made of words. It's built from descriptions of symbols that remind the mind what to think and the body what to feel. It all stems from the language we use to describe something. So, look, I know that this all might seem far-fetched, but for just one day, spend time noticing what you're saying and how your body responds to it. Listen to what others are saying and notice how your body reacts to their words. You'll find a direct correlation between language and feeling, between language and the thoughts that come up next. Then try describing things differently. For instance, instead of saying, I think, try saying, my mind keeps bringing up this idea that ... Or instead of saying I feel when we're addressing a thought, try something like I think. And if you want to take it even deeper, instead of I think, say I'm noticing the thought that blank keeps coming up for me. And by the way, to backtrack just a little bit, more often than not, when we say something like I feel like we should turn left, like I feel like we should turn left, we're not addressing a feeling, we're addressing a thought. We think we should turn left. There is a thought coming up, maybe in the form of a memory or a judgment, but those two things they're not feelings, right? Like this, they're two of the 6 cognitive faculties of the mind. Right? Memory, thinking, like judgment, perception, consciousness, memory, and thinking. Those are 6 cognitive faculties. Feeling isn't in there. So I think it's, it sounds like I'm being, intense, but, I'm not saying we need to become like so rigid about this, but let's at least give a little thought to the words we're using. Pay attention to what you're saying. We have a collective consciousness. We all share a mind on some level. So when we say things, whether we're joking or just using platitudes, a part of us doesn't know the difference. Remember, the subconscious mind doesn't have a sense of humor. This isn't about being pedantic. It's about being a little more thoughtful than we typically are, right? The jokes we make about who we are or how we are act like mantras. They are affirming that these self-doubting beliefs are somehow reality. Okay, maybe some of it is true. Maybe you are a lot to handle. Maybe you are a mess, but is that what you want? Do you want to stay that way? Do you want to keep pushing people away and attracting these shitty relationships into your life? Of course not. So stop joking about it. It's not funny. In fact, sometimes this shitty belief you have about yourself actually hurts your feelings. Sometimes when you're alone in bed at night, wide awake, depressed about how things seem to be continually going sideways for you, there is a piece of you that's afraid it's true. Just because you're not sad about it at the moment and could possibly get a laugh about it doesn't mean there needs to be a joke. Reel it in. And while you're at it, stop sharing those dumb memes about how shitty your life is and how bad things always happen to you, how mentally ill you are, or how Mondays are hard. I swear those GIFs where someone's falling all over the place, followed by coming into the work week, those are always shared by people who are they desperately wish none of it was true. But they still share them because making a joke about the fucking thing is easier than creating actual lasting change. And by the way, this applies to those memes about how hard a spiritual awakening is. Just stop it. Fucking cut it out. I've been guilty of this. In fact, you can go back far enough in this podcast, you can hear me do it. It's hard. It's not easy to clean up our language. It's hard because it's changing our entire reality. For me, it was about me not wanting you to think that I was smart. And that fear has a lot of layers. You see, if you don't know that I think I'm smart, you won't hurt me. You'll leave me alone. If I shrink myself down, you won't notice me, and then I'm safe. See? It's got layers. I've had to work very hard on fixing that. It hasn't been easy. I get it. But I can tell you it's worth it. Right now, I know that I'm intelligent, lovable, and easy to handle. And even right now, I'm struggling with not going into the reasons for that fear. It's wild to catch my mind bringing up things to say to you to make excuses, because even right now, the fear is there. It's very small, but I notice it. So, when we begin to change the language we use to describe who we are, how we are, what the world is, and what others are, we cast a new spell. We start using new mantras, and we use those mantras to affirm a new reality. And that's the spiritual path. We observe the mind, we shape our thoughts, and we transform our reality. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the further creation of this content, go to the website theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. There you can explore the many ways you can do that. Also, click the About button, read a little bit about me, see what I have to offer you in terms of one-on-one sessions. And while you're at it, don't forget to check out the Patreon tiers. We are building a spiritual community of everyday people with not so everyday interests. So go ahead and check out the participate button on the website and join us.